Welcome back to the Team to Beat Miami Heat podcast. My name is Amir. Before I get into today's episode, just want to thank everybody for following the podcast on Spotify. Also, want to thank everybody for following the podcast on YouTube. If you are watching on YouTube, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. So, for today's episode, I want to talk about a report that came out earlier today that said that the Miami Heat are linked to the Utah Jazz star Lauri Markkanen and are interested in acquiring the power forward from the Utah Jazz. So we know Lauri Markkanen has generated plenty of interest this offseason. We don't know what direction the Jazz are going to go in. They've mentioned that they don't want to trade him. And now there are new reports saying that they've had conversations with multiple teams that have been linked to Lauri Markkanen. So according to ESPN's Zach Lowe, he said a pile of teams have expressed interest in Lauri Markkanen, including the Golden State Warriors, San Antonio Spurs, the Sacramento Kings, and now the Miami Heat. So Markkanen is 27 years old. He has 1 year remaining on his contract and could become an unrestricted free agent after next season if he doesn't sign a new deal or extension with the Utah Jazz before then. So Jake Fisher of Yahoo Sports also reported last week that the Jazz were expected to prioritize signing Markkanen to an extension. And however, Fisher noted that opposing organizations were also simultaneously hoping that the Jazz would decide to not extend him and essentially go in full tank mode and perhaps join the Cooper flag sweepstakes. So Fisher also reported that the Jazz were involved in trade discussions with the Brooklyn Nets for Mikal Bridges, which I think is really interesting. But he was traded to the New York Knicks, obviously. And it was interesting with the Nets because they mentioned 3 days before they traded Bridges that he was off the market. They weren't willing to trade him. And then 3 days after that, he was on the New York Knicks. So you never know. But the Warriors, the Heat, and Kings are all teams that were either in the playoffs or on the fringe of making the playoffs last season. And the Spurs are obviously a bad team that just got Wemby, and they are interested in progressing this build as soon as possible based on how amazing Wemby was during his rookie season, both offensively and defensively. And so, arguably, they want to try to fast forward this build and add a perfect big next to Wemby. But also, this arguably could be the perfect big next to Bam Adebayo. So Markkanen was not an all-star last season, but he was the season before that. But anyway, still had a really good season with the horrible Utah Jazz. He averaged 23.2 points per game, 8.2 rebounds, and 3.2 three-pointers made per game while shooting 48% from the field and 39.9% from three. So he, again, would be a great addition for this Miami Heat team. It would give the Miami Heat another um, rotational big next to Bam Adebayo, who has a skill set that doesn't match anybody on this current roster right now. He's one of the best three-point shooting big men in the NBA, and him and Bam Adebayo would be probably the best front court in the NBA. He's not that great at defense, but he's not horrible either. And I think that would be super interesting to add Lauri Markkanen. Again, he's only making 18 million next season, which is just insane. So he's going to be paid big time. So the Miami Heat would have to extend him unless they want a 1 year rental, perhaps, but I doubt they would. But here's the issue with Lauri Markkanen joining the Miami Heat. It's going to be extremely difficult in general. A report came out saying it's going to be difficult for teams to acquire him, but more importantly, it's going to be more difficult for the Miami Heat because, again, asset management, draft picks. We don't have a lot that we can offer hypothetically. So it seems like Danny Ainge historically has enjoyed trading for draft picks, and the Miami Heat simply don't have enough of that right now. So it's unlikely that we do acquire him. And again, I am never going to get my hopes up for anybody who has been linked to the Miami Heat after the Damian Lillard saga. And so I'm going to be pessimistic, unfortunately, when it comes to these types of players that the Miami Heat are interested in, especially when we don't have, again, the draft capital right now, which is typically the most premium assets that teams look for when they are trading away an all-star or superstar or even star level player. So I believe I saw something on allyoucanheat.com or another website saying that the Miami Heat technically only have one pick they can offer in the future. They have the 2030 pick they can offer. They have the 2031 or 2032 also, but they can't offer both, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but it looks like they only have one pick. That's not going to cut it. Mikal Bridges went for 5. Okay, that's outlandish, but still. If I was Danny Ainge and I'm getting rid of Lauri Markkanen, who's 27 years old, who's what I believe 6'11", power forward, one of the best players in his position in the NBA, you can get 2 to 4 picks, anywhere from 2 to 4 picks, most likely 3 picks. And the Miami Heat simply don't have that. So if the Miami Heat were lucky enough to acquire him, they would have to give up the farm. And what I mean is they would definitely have to give up Tyler Hero, which they would want to dump his salary anyway. The Utah Jazz are one of the 2 teams that have salary cap space, which can take more money back for Lauri Markkanen because not Duncan. Tyler makes 29 next year, which is 11 more than Lowry anyway. So if we do have to provide additional players because we don't have the draft capital, they're going to be taking in way more salary, perhaps. But if I was them, I would say, hey, you don't have more than one pick, so give me Tyler, give me your 2030 first round pick, and then give me 2 other young players that the Miami Heat don't seem like they want to give up. And I don't necessarily know if I want to give up these players for Lauri Markkanen. For Donovan Mitchell, before he signed his extension, I would have gave up the farm. But Lowry, is he that type of guy compared to Donovan Mitchell? I don't think so. But either way, they might ask and say, hey, give us Jaime and Jovic, because those are 2 first round picks, technically, right? Jovic was a first round pick 2 years ago, Jaime last season. So, hey, give us Tyler, Jaime, Jovic. And Jaime's making 5 million. Jovic is making like 3. So it's 8 plus Tyler's 29 million. They would be taking in about 19 extra million. So we would be getting off 19 extra $1 million off our caps, plus getting Lauri Markkanen, but we would give up our first round pick, 2 of our youngest pieces, and Tyler Hero, who's also another young piece. So is that worth it to Heat fans? Some will say hell yes. Some will say hell no. I don't know where I stand in terms of offering both. I don't ideally want to, but again, we have one more realistic year to contend, if I can even use that word, because it's going to be super difficult for this Miami Heat team to even be out of the play-in and finishing as a top 6 team, as all these teams around us have been improving and adding different players and pieces, and still have the opportunity in cap space with some teams to make different moves and add different rotational pieces and veterans to their roster and bolster their rotations and teams. So I don't know, but is it worth it taking one more stab with Jimmy Butler if he's going to potentially be more available because he's in a contract year and he wants to get one last bag before he retires? And will he go all out? Will he play 70 games perhaps? And will the other players be healthy, like Tyler Hero, if he's still on this team, or whoever, to catapult us? And if we are going to be potentially having one last run, why not take a chance at a Lauri Markkanen, at a Trae Young, at a Brandon Ingram, insert whoever type of player in that kind of range, to take one last leap with Jimmy Butler? Or we don't believe that's going to happen and assume that we're going to trade Jimmy Butler before the trade deadline. Let's just add a Finney Smith or someone of that caliber, or even less, honestly. Let's just get some veteran minimums of Dennis Smith Jr. and then whoever else we can at wing and call it a day and see what happens. Maybe trade Jimmy, get a couple of draft picks, and then rebuild with Bam in a soft rebuild. Who knows? But either way, I'm interested in Lauri Markkanen. I want him on this team. I don't know at what price. I don't think it's realistic, but who knows? Crazier things have happened. So let me know in the comments what you think about Lauri Markkanen. What are the odds of the Heat actually signing him?